The Paul Leslie Interviews.
I want to introduce everybody to you. This is songwriter Michael Garrett we're talking to.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for making the time to do this.
Oh, you're welcome.
I think most stories are best from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
Where are you from?
I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, is where I was born and raised. I now live in Eureka Springs, Arkansas.
What was it like growing up in Tulsa?
Well, I grew up in the post-war. I grew up in the 50s, and Tulsa was a very much going concern. And just the post-war boom was there, and there were oil refineries, and just the blue-collar world that I grew up in. And it was booming. And the music that we got was on the radio, and in those days around there, we didn't get a lot of the R&B stuff. We would get white covers of those things, which was interesting. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I got smacked up upside the head with the Beatles, like so many folks, and that was what pushed me over into music. Just in the aftermath of JFK's assassination, the timing was just right, and I needed something to latch on to, and that's what happened.
So you mentioned these white covers of artists, I'm guessing like Fats Domino.
Right. Yeah, now Fats, for some reason, slipped through with just that he was unique in that. But for instance, we got a lot of Johnny Rivers covers of, for instance, Tracks of My Tears. I didn't hear Smokey for years until I started, digging around. Oklahoma, in a lot of aspects, it was kind of America's Australia. It was Indian territory, and there were a lot of real characters that ended up there, and the politics have always been very strange. Yeah.
Tell us about your parents.
My parents were from my dad was from Idaho, and they moved to Oklahoma, and he met my mother, and they lived in Tulsa, and he worked for the Postal Service. Went to work and worked till he retired as a postmaster. My mom was a homemaker, and it was very much just an ideal beaver cleaver world in a way that I grew up in. Yeah. They were, good folks, loved music. My dad used to wake us up with Little Richard in the morning to go to school. So, I very much appreciated their hardworking and loving the attention that they gave us, and it was a good time.
You mentioned the Beatles. What were some of the other artists that you most enjoyed?
Well, yeah, other than at the time, you have to understand that they took me so fully. I heard the other stuff, all the stuff that was out there, and loved, so lots of songs. But as far as they were my world, and of course, you hear all of this, the other stuff that was going on was interesting because it's on the radio. But as far as really digging into something, and then when they broke up, I was lost, and that's when the band came into my world. So then the band led me in a whole another direction, and I began to play bluegrass as well. and spent several years playing bluegrass, and and then eventually I got bit by the reggae bug, and which I, for several years, went that way, and then African music came into my life, and so I play in an African pop band here in Northwest Arkansas. I've got a nephew from Ivory Coast who lives here. He fronts the band, and he's a drummer and dancer. That's kind of where it all went.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The variety that you like. You like bluegrass, African music, reggae.
Really, I've just always been fascinated by all world styles.
So tell us, what is the name of this African band that you're a part of?
It's Ozakwaba. It's Ozakwaaba, which Akwaba is a West African greeting, a welcome. And the OZ is just, we're in the Ozarks, so it's welcome to the Ozarks, basically. But yeah.
How did you find out that you could write songs?
That really came from, I wasn't able to learn to hear lyrics that well. For me, music just strikes at such an elemental level, it was hard for me to remember lyrics. And songs of the day I would be playing, and I would just kind of have to make up lyrics because I didn't really know what they were saying. And I just realized, well, I can do that. So kind of came from that.
Would you say that you're more moved by the lyrics or the melody of a song?
See, that's really interesting because it's so different for what attracts. I'm probably more drawn to the music, and yet lyrics are probably what I spend most of the time crafting and just really obsessing about. So but it takes me a while when I'm listening to music, to listen to lyrics it's way down the line because I'm just picking the music apart generally as I listen. Just okay, what's the kick drum doing? What's the just kind of follow through the orchestra or whatever it is, and so music has a different use for me as a composer.
What was the first song that you wrote that you said, this is a keeper?
It's probably one of the first 2 or 3 songs that I wrote was, it's been so long ago. Yeah, it was very early on that I've been fortunate to have a lot of keepers over the years, and of course a lot of throwaways. But I'm grateful to have the songs that have come through me.
There's a song that I heard of yours called Pollyanna.
Oh yeah.
What era was that from?
That was 1993, maybe, when I recorded that. Yeah. That was kind of based on a Bakwanga, South African groove. Yeah, that song was what I call, that's my upbeat negative. It's sad little stories in these perky little melodies.
I like that song.
Thank you. Yeah.
There's a singer-songwriter named Jared Tyler.
Yes.
And you've written songs with him, and he's also covered some of the songs that you wrote.
That's correct.
How did you meet him?
Well, my wife works for the Postal Service, and Jared's father worked at the post office. And and it was from her telling me about, stuff that Jared's dad had played for her, and she said he was really good. And so I called him up, and we started working together.
What did you think it was like to write with him?
What I would say about writing with Jared is, so many times Jared would have exactly what was needed, and he wouldn't recognize it because it just came out the way it was supposed to be. He was just telling you the idea of it, but even in saying that, okay, that's it. He just said it. You don't have to reword it. So yeah, it was interesting. But in general, co-writing is not easy for me. I've always written solo in general, but I worked with Jared and wrote songs with him for his project, and then of course he recorded some of my songs on his project as well as the co-writes. So that was, it was a good learning experience for both of us.
But typically you like to write solo.
That's typically how it works, right.
Well, one of the songs you wrote solo, there's a song on there on Jared's album, Blue Hallelujah, called, I think, is it The Dancer?
Dancer, right, Dancer.
That's quite a song.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love that song.
Was that based on something you witnessed, or was it something you dreamed up?
It was an amalgam. The melody actually was a bluegrass. I had it as a fast bluegrass melody without any lyrics for a long time. It was just like an instrumental thing. And then, so I slowed that down, and it became, the stories, the story is in there of my grandmother who went into a nursing home and suffered dementia, and I watched her decline. So I had that, and also, since then, different grandmothers and mothers and in-laws. So I'll spend a lot of time in nursing homes and just kind of the stories that are told there. And so that it kind of just came out of that.
There's another song on the Jared Tyler album, Blue Hallelujah, called Reggae Billy Hill.
Right.
It's a very, very interesting lyrics, very interesting story. Tell us about what inspired that one.
Okay. Well, this would have been probably 1982. And I came home from work. I work as a house painter, and I was probably painting. But I came home from work, and my kids, who were just all under 5 at the time, maybe 3 of them, but they were playing. They have the record player, the old school little record player. They have the 45 of Marley's Stir It Up, but they had the speed up to 78, and so it sounded like it sounded like the skank. It sounded like what the mandolin does in bluegrass. It's the chink 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 stand it up. So it sounded like I had this kind of the image of Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys and Marley and the Wailers on the stage, and it was right during it was the early Reagan era. So the threat of nuclear war and nuclear winter was there, and so the idea of this post-apocalyptic festival where everybody was gathering in the warmer climes, and it kind of just it grew out of that.
Very interesting. There's a number of different people on message boards and whatnot who have tried to interpret the lyrics of that song.
I know that is so interesting to me. It is. I've responded to some of those. At one point, there was a Buffett News, I think it was, a thread, and there were, several people, and I was able to respond to each of them that they had one aspect of it right, because that's the thing about songs, somewhere in there, if you can relate to it, then there's something that it was in the writer that, connects with you. So, yeah.
Well, we should tell the listeners that the reason it was on a Buffett News site is because Jimmy Buffett recorded Reggae Billy Hill.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He certainly did. He was exposed to it. Russ Titleman, who I had produced Jared's album with, he had formerly produced a Buffett, maybe a couple of Buffett albums. Anyway, he was playing Jared's record to Buffett Buffett has a label, and Buffett passed on the record, but he said, but I want to do that song. So that's where that came from. Yeah.
What did you think of his interpretation of your song?
Oh, it was that band was, it's a really great recording, and you have to learn to let go when you're a writer and a singer as well. Just learning to let go of they have their own way of doing things, And I'm just, it's funny because Buffett was off of my radar at the time. I had no idea. Then I found out about this whole world of parrot heads and everything, and now, he immediately became my favorite artist because he's the first person to cut one of my songs. But I love what they were able to do with it. It's really an honor. And I got to hear him play it live in a concert in Little Rock once, and that was a real high point too.
Did you ever have any communication with him?
I met him at he played at Little Rock a few years back. I got to spend a little bit of time talking to him. Yeah, it was great. We have a lot of similar our interests in West Africa. He spent a lot of time over there as well, so it was really good to connect with him.
Have you tried at all to actively pitch your songs to get other people to record your songs?
I have with no success. It's a very it's a tough world. You've got if your connection to the artist or the producer isn't just a straight shot, it's really hard to get things through. I think I have a ton of really wonderful songs that maybe someday will be enjoyed by. Well, I have not been as proactive in putting stuff out there as I could have been, but that's just the way it is.
Is there any particular song of yours that you could especially see another artist recording? Like a lot of times someone will say, I wrote this song, I listened to it a few times, and then I thought, man, I could really imagine Bruce Hornsby or...
Right, or X, yeah. There are a lot. And living and not living, living and dead. There are lots of people that I can hear. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I wish at some point I could just, sit. I would love to sit down with you and play you a bunch of songs because I've got tons of. That's so many ideas there that it's hard to even just pull one out. And I'm so not up with who's singing what right now. Very, very insular, I think. I work and listen we listen to different, Pandora stations and whatnot, but my exposure to, there's just so much music out there that but I don't know who should ever sing, who should be singing what. I don't even know who's out there.
Well, who are a few of the all-time favorite songwriters of yours?
Oh, well, of course, I've made my big nod to Lennon McCartney, of course. But Paul Simon is just, without peer. Bob Marley, great songwriter. U2 have written some amazing songs. There's so many. Roger Miller was a great songwriter. And you have to, Dylan, my God, you just have to tip your hat, because how has he continued to do it? So there's the world is full of amazing people. Just people are amazing. Just let me flip that back around. Yeah.
Is there a song of yours that you could say is your favorite?
That always it kind of changes over time, but for most of since it's been written, which is 32 or 35 years ago, Reggae Hill's been my favorite song. But I've written some since that have come to be. I've got one called Every Temple Will Fall that is become really dear to my heart. But yeah, that's an interesting question.
When somebody listens to your music, whether it's Jared Tyler, Jimmy Buffett, if you're performing it, whatever, no matter what the mechanism is, what do you want the listener to get from that experience?
Connection. That's the simplest level. Just to be connected to that. To be whatever the story, the feel, the groove. People would take it in on so many different levels. Just to, I want them to. I don't want there to be anything in the way of them experiencing it. I just want it to be an open flow.
What is the best thing about being Michael Garrett?
Best thing about being Michael Garrett. The best thing is just being. It's just, yeah, it's quite beyond words, shall we say. I love being me. The best, the luckiest thing, I have a wonderful wife. We've been together since 1977. And so the best thing about me being me is that I love being me. Yeah.
It's a great answer.
Oh, thanks.
You have the opportunity to just say whatever you want to anyone out there who's listening. So I would invite you just to say whatever you want.
Well, if anybody is listening and has any interest at all, that's amazing to me. But because I know my music has not been widely known, but I just want to encourage everyone out there to just find out who you are. What is that? What is that essential part of you that has always been there? And just be yourself. Whatever that is. Yeah, there's very little more that can be said beyond that. So I thank you for that opportunity.
Well, you just said that you would want the listener to find out who you are. So I would ask you, who is Michael Garrett?
Michael Garrett. What we're calling Michael Garrett is generally when people speak like that, talking about a certain body that was born at a certain place in a certain time and has acquired all sorts of conditioning and different stories and different abilities that have been developed or not developed. And so as far as who that is, there are so many variables, and those change from moment to moment in lots of ways. It's like the cells of the body. It's just everything's moving like that. But at the core of that is the one who's there in deep sleep. And it's wordless and formless, and it's the essential, and it's shared. It's beyond identity. It's a shared reality. It's even beyond reality. It's a shared being that we all partake in. So that's right. What we call the Michael Garrett is just the guy who's hanging off a ladder or playing a guitar or, doing this or doing that. But at the core of that, the one who's experiencing all of those experiences is the same as you, and it's the same as all of us. It's being. So we're off beyond words now. So
I thank you very much for sharing with us.
Oh, you're quite welcome, Paul. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Likewise.
All right. Well, have a great day.
All right, sir. You too.